The final 10 nights of Ramadan were never ordinary. They were a countdown to mercy, a window of infinite blessings, a spiritual marathon where every second mattered. And when those nights arrived, the Prophet Muhammad shifted into a level of devotion unlike anything seen before. His companions would say, when the last 10 began, he tightened his waistcloth, stayed awake through the night, and awakened his family. They knew instantly, this is the final sprint. Imagine the quiet streets of Medina. The sky is dark, stars scattered like pearls. The city sleeps, but one home is filled with light, not the light of lamps, but the light of worship. Inside, the Prophet rises with purpose. His footsteps are soft, but his presence carries the weight of a mission. He knows these nights can change destinies. These nights can erase years of mistakes. These nights can rewrite a person's entire future. In these moments, he doesn't leave anything to chance. He worships with heart, with depth, with a focus so intense that even the angels must pause and witness. Long before his followers coined the phrase, "The last stretch matters most," he lived it. He demonstrated it. He embodied it. It wasn't just about praying more. It was about connecting more. He lengthened his recitation until the verses felt alive. He stood so still in prayer that his chest moved gently with each breath, his whispers blending with the silence of the night. If a tear rolled down his blessed face, it wasn't out of fear alone. It was love, hope, longing for his Lord. And he didn't keep this spiritual treasure to himself. He walked through his home calling his family, softly, lovingly, waking them for prayer. Not with force, not with pressure, with care, with warmth, because he wanted them to taste what he tasted, the sweetness of standing before Allah when the world sleeps. He treated the last 10 nights as if they were the last 10 nights of his life. No excuses, no distractions, no slowing down, only sprinting toward forgiveness, toward closeness, toward the promise of Laylatul Qadr. And for the believers who followed him, this became the blueprint, the mindset, the attitude. When you enter the final 10, you don't walk, you run. The night he closed the door to the world, the final 10 nights were not just a spiritual sprint for the Prophet. They were a conscious withdrawal from everything that pulled the heart away from Allah. As those blessed nights began, he made a deliberate choice, a choice to step back from the world, to close the door gently but firmly, and step into a sacred space where nothing existed except him and his Lord. Inside the quiet of the masjid, the atmosphere changed. The companions noticed it immediately. The Prophet wasn't just worshipping. He was entering a different state. His focus sharpened. His prayers deepened. His silence became meaningful. Even the way he looked at the ground carried a sense of purpose, as if he was searching for the exact door where Laylatul Qadr would arrive. He performed itikaf with his entire heart. No conversations that weren't necessary. No worldly focus. No distractions. Just pure presence. This was a man who had responsibilities heavier than mountains. A leader, a father, a teacher, a judge, a guide. Yet in these nights, he showed the world that nothing is more important than the connection between a servant and his creator. People think withdrawing means running away, but the Prophet showed that withdrawing can mean running towards something greater, running toward clarity, peace, renewal. In that quiet sanctuary, he sat with the Qur'an, reciting with a softness that could calm storms. His fingers would glide over the pages like someone touching a precious treasure. His heart vibrated with every verse. He wasn't just reading. He was absorbing, living, breathing the words. Those around him saw the shift. The companions would whisper, "This is not like any other night." And they were right. The Prophet was preparing himself and teaching the world how to seek the night that is better than 1,000 months. He taught by example. Sometimes, to rise spiritually, you must disconnect physically. Sometimes, to find yourself, you must step away from everyone else. Sometimes, to receive the biggest blessings, you must enter a space where nothing competes with your worship. The door to the world was closed. The door to the heavens was wide open. The Prophet showed that when the last 10 nights arrive, the wise don't slow down. They isolate, elevate, and dedicate. When the nights became his battlefield of dua, the final 10 nights were more than worship for the Prophet. They were a battlefield of dua. Not a battlefield of swords or shields, but of raised hands, trembling voices, and a heart that poured everything out before Allah. These nights were where destinies were rewritten, where burdens lifted, where the impossible suddenly felt possible. When darkness settled over Medina, the Prophet would lift his hands, not casually, not quietly, but with a depth that could shake the soul of anyone watching. This was not the dua of someone asking lightly. This was the dua of someone who truly understood the power of speaking directly to the one who controls every heartbeat, every breath, every sunrise. His voice would become soft and slow, each word carrying weight. Sometimes he would repeat a dua again and again, like someone knocking at a door they know will eventually open. His tears weren't a display. They were a language only the heart understands. Companions said they could feel the intensity even when they couldn't hear his words. His silence was louder than speech. He taught the Ummah that dua was not a backup plan. It was the plan. It was the weapon of every believer. It was the rope connecting the earth to the heavens. And in the last 10 nights, this weapon became sharper. He prayed for forgiveness until forgiveness felt like a friend. He prayed for mercy until mercy surrounded him like air. He prayed for his Ummah, for people he had never seen, never met, never spoken to. But he prayed for them like a father prays for his children. Imagine the weight of that. While the world slept, your name, your life, your future may have been included in the whispered duas of the Messenger of Allah. For him, dua was not a ritual. It was a lifeline. In these nights, he showed that when life feels heavy, when the future feels uncertain, when your heart feels tired, there is one place where everything becomes light: in dua. These nights were proof that Allah listens most closely when the world is most quiet, that the door of mercy swings open widest when the night is darkest, that a believer's greatest strength is not in what they hold, but in what they raise. Hands up, heart open, destiny changing. The night he awakened hearts, not just bodies. As the final 10 nights of Ramadan unfolded, the Prophet Muhammad didn't only increase his own worship, he awakened the hearts of everyone around him. His home became a place of spiritual electricity. The atmosphere shifted. Even the air felt different. These weren't normal nights, and he didn't allow his family to treat them as such. He didn't wake them with urgency. He woke them with love. His voice was gentle, almost like a whisper floating through the stillness of the night. But that whisper carried meaning, purpose, and a reminder. This is your moment. Don't let it slip away. He wanted them to taste the sweetness of these nights, the peace that settles on the soul when the world is asleep and only Allah is awake for you. His goal wasn't to force worship, but to inspire it, to awaken not just their bodies, but their hearts. He knew anyone can stand up physically, but only a truly awakened heart can stand in humility before its creator. Inside his home, the dim lights flickered softly. Each person moved quietly, performing wudu, preparing for prayer, finding a place to sit with the Qur'an. It wasn't noise that filled the house. It was sincerity. It was presence. It was a family united by worship, connected by their love for Allah, and guided by the example of the Prophet. Imagine the scene: the Prophet's daughter, Fatima, rising in the night, Ali standing beside her, their small home glowing with devotion. These weren't just rituals. These were memories being carved into their souls, memories that would shape generations. The Prophet wanted his family to understand something crucial, something we often forget. Worship is not a burden. It is an inheritance, a legacy, a gift you pass on, not through lectures, but through moments like these. And he knew the final 10 nights were the best time to plant these seeds. No night was guaranteed. No moment was promised. So he filled these nights with life, with spiritual energy, with a longing for Allah that touched every heart in the house. He awakened them so they could awaken themselves, so their hearts would recognize Laylatul Qadr when it arrived, so they would feel the weight of mercy falling from the sky. Because in these blessed nights, bodies rise from sleep, but hearts rise toward heaven. When the Qur'an became his companion in the dark, in the final 10 nights of Ramadan, the Qur'an was not just a book beside the Prophet. It was his closest companion. These nights transformed his relationship with the words of Allah into something deeper, something almost indescribable. The world outside slept under the calm desert sky, but inside the masjid, the messenger of Allah sat in stillness, holding the revelation that shaped humanity. He didn't rush through the verses. He didn't read them as a task to complete. He recited like a man who was returning home. Every word, every pause, every breath filled with meaning. His chest rose gently as the verses flowed, his voice soft but steady, echoing in the silence of the night. Sometimes his recitation felt like a whisper to the stars. Sometimes it felt like a conversation with his Lord. Those who were near him said they could feel the Qur'an living through him. When he recited verses of mercy, his face softened with hope. When verses of warning came, the weight of responsibility settled in his eyes. And when Allah mentioned his promises, a quiet smile would appear, a smile of trust, faith, certainty. He didn't simply read the Qur'an. He absorbed it. He carried it. He felt it in his bones. The Qur'an was not on his tongue. It was in his heart. During these blessed nights, his recitation would lengthen until the moments blended into hours. Some nights, He stood so long that his feet swelled, but he never complained. How could he? He was standing with the words that brought him comfort, healing, direction, and purpose. Every verse became a doorway. Every surah became a journey. Every night became a meeting with the one who sent the revelation. And the companions who saw him were changed. Watching him recite was like witnessing devotion in its purest form. It taught them, and us, something essential. When life feels uncertain, when your heart feels heavy, when your soul feels lost, the Qur'an becomes your anchor. It becomes your nighttime companion, your comfort in silence, your lantern in the dark. In the final 10 nights, the Prophet showed that the Qur'an is not meant to be rushed through. It is meant to be lived with. Because when the world sleeps, the Qur'an awakens the soul. The night his tears became a bridge to Allah. There is something different about the tears shed in the final 10 nights of Ramadan. They are not ordinary tears. They are not the tears of sadness alone, nor of fear alone. They are the tears of a heart returning home. And in those nights, the Prophet Muhammad showed the world what it means to cry before Allah with sincerity, dignity, and love. When the darkness of the night wrapped around Medina, the Prophet would stand in prayer, and his voice would soften until it almost merged with the silence. The verses he recited touched something deep within him, and within anyone who heard him. Sometimes a verse would stop him completely, not because he forgot, but because the meaning struck him with such intensity that tears began to fall. His tears were not loud. They were quiet, gentle, flowing like a stream that knows exactly where it is headed, toward the mercy of Allah. His beard would become wet. His chest would shake lightly, and those standing behind him would hear a soft sound, like a kettle quietly boiling. It was the sound of a heart opening. He didn't cry because he was weak. He cried because he knew Allah was near. These moments taught the Ummah that crying in worship is not a sign of spiritual perfection. It's a sign of spiritual honesty. It's the moment when the soul admits its need, its longing, its dependence on the divine. The Prophet showed that tears are not a weakness. They are a bridge that carries your heart closer to Allah with every drop. And during the last 10 nights, that bridge grew stronger. He cried for forgiveness. He cried out of gratitude. He cried for his Ummah, for people who would come centuries later, living in lands he never walked, speaking languages he never spoke, but loving the same Lord he loved. Imagine the weight of that love, your Prophet, in the dark of the night, asking Allah to forgive you before you were even born. His tears taught us that the final 10 nights are not about performing perfect worship. They are about presenting an honest heart, a heart that may be tired, flawed, or wounded, but still turns to Allah. Because in these nights, the tears you hide from the world are seen by the one who never sleeps, and every tear becomes a step closer to him. The night he treated time like gold. In the last 10 nights of Ramadan, the Prophet Muhammad did something extraordinary. He treated every second like gold, not like something valuable, but like something irreplaceable. Time transformed. Minutes felt like treasures. Hours felt like opportunities. And he refused to let even one slip away. Everyone around him noticed the shift. His companions said that when the final 10 nights arrived, he didn't just increase his worship, he tightened his commitment, sharpened his focus, and moved with the urgency of someone who understood what was at stake. He knew these nights carried the potential of Laylatul Qadr, a night better than 1,000 months, a night that could redefine an entire lifetime. So he taught us, by example, how to honor time. He didn't waste moments talking unnecessarily. He didn't stretch conversations. He didn't stroll casually. He lived those nights with intention, purposeful, deliberate, awake. Even the way he walked in the masjid had a quiet intensity, as if he was racing towards something only he could see. When he stood in prayer, time dissolved. He wasn't counting minutes. He was counting blessings. His ruka lasted longer. His sujud became deeper. His standing felt endless. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He tasted a sweetness in worship that made time feel weightless, and his companions saw the effect. They saw him praying as if the night itself was slipping through his fingers, and he was determined to claim every drop of mercy it carried. They saw him making dua with the urgency of a person who understood that the door of forgiveness was open, but not forever. He treated time as if Allah was watching every moment closely. He treated worship as if this might be the last Ramadan of his life. He treated these nights as the final chance to rewrite destiny. And through his example, he taught the world something powerful. If you want your life to change, you must first change how you treat your time. The last 10 nights are not meant to be survived. They're meant to be invested. They're meant to be protected. They're meant to be lived with awareness, hunger, and hope. Because when the Prophet looked at these nights, he didn't see hours. He saw doors. Doors to mercy. Doors to forgiveness. Doors to Jannah. And he refused to leave any door closed. The night the angels filled the sky, the final 10 nights carried a secret that the Prophet understood better than anyone. The presence of angels. Not a few, not dozens, but a sky filled with them, descending, surrounding, recording, and bringing peace to every corner of the night. These weren't ordinary nights, and he didn't treat them casually, because he knew the unseen world was moving in ways the human eye could never capture. As the darkness deepened and Medina grew silent, the Prophet worshipped with the awareness that the heavens were opening. Laylatul Qadr could be tonight, and if it was, then the sky above him would be more crowded than any battlefield, any gathering, any celebration the world had ever seen. Angels descending like waves, angels carrying mercy, angels bearing peace, angels spreading tranquility through every house where Allah was remembered. And in the middle of that unseen descent stood one man, the messenger of Allah, leading the way with devotion that lit the night brighter than the moon. He prayed with the knowledge that Jibreel, the greatest of all angels, would descend during these blessed nights. Imagine that moment, the same Jibreel who brought revelation, who appeared in the purest forms, who shook mountains with a command, descending gently, carrying peace, searching for hearts turned toward Allah. The Prophet taught us something profound through his actions. If angels are descending looking for worshippers, then make sure you're among them. If the heavens are opening, don't stay asleep. If mercy is falling, don't hide indoors. He recited Qur'an knowing that every verse echoed through a sky full of angels. He made dua knowing that angels would say, Ameen. He stood in sujud knowing that the earth beneath him and the sky above him were witnessing a moment of pure submission. The companions could feel an unusual stillness in these nights, a calmness that wrapped around them like a blanket. Some described it as a night where the heart feels lighter. Others said, the air feels soft, as if the wind itself is praying. This was not imagination. This was the unseen world interacting with the seen world. And the Prophet showed by example. When angels fill the sky, the believer fills his heart. When mercy descends, the believer rises. When Laylatul Qadr might arrive, you don't sleep. You seek. The night he hid his pain to protect our hope. During the final 10 nights of Ramadan, the Prophet Muhammad didn't approach worship from a place of comfort. He didn't stand in prayer because his body was strong or his nights were easy. The truth is far deeper and far more inspiring. These were nights when he often hid his physical exhaustion, his emotional weight, and his personal struggles. Not because he wanted to appear perfect, but because he wanted his Ummah to believe in their own ability to rise. He carried a responsibility heavier than mountains. The worries of his people, the grief of losing loved ones, the burden of delivering the message, the challenges from enemies, all of it lived inside his heart. Yet when the final 10 nights arrived, he didn't let anyone see the heaviness. He didn't let weakness overshadow worship. He didn't let pain define the moment. He pushed through. He stood long after his feet swelled. He recited long after his voice softened. He made dua long after his tears blurred his sight. His companions sometimes noticed signs of deep fatigue, small hints, subtle moments, but he never allowed them to believe that difficulty was a barrier between a servant and Allah. He wanted them to know, even when you're tired, Allah sees your effort. Even when your body is weak, your heart can still shine. And so he concealed his pain to protect the Ummah's hope. He prayed with a calm strength, as if standing before Allah erased the weight he carried. His sujud became a place of renewal. His tears washed away what the world had placed on his shoulders. In these moments, he showed the Ummah that worship is not about being perfect. It's about being present. It's about showing up even when life is heavy. Those 10 nights were a lesson. A believer doesn't wait for comfort to worship. A believer uses worship to find comfort. And when people looked at him, they didn't see a man struggling. They saw a man glowing with devotion. A man whose commitment made you believe anything was possible. A man who taught the world that closeness to Allah is found not in ease, but in perseverance. He hid his pain so that generations would never feel discouraged. He hid his fatigue so that the weak could feel strong. He hid his struggle so that your heart could keep going. Because in the final 10 nights, he wasn't just worshipping, he was carrying us toward mercy. The night he showed us how to end strong. As the last of the 10 blessed nights approached, the Prophet Muhammad embodied a truth that would echo through every Ramadan until the end of time. How you finish matters more than how you start. These nights were not simply the end of a month. They were the final chapter of a spiritual journey, the last chance to rewrite destiny. The moment when a believer decides who they want to become. The companions noticed something profound. The Prophet didn't slow down as the month came to a close. He intensified. His worship became sharper, his focus deeper, his nights longer. While others felt their energy fading, he showed them what it means to rise when the finish line is near. To him, the final night was just as valuable, maybe even more, than the first. He taught through action, not words. He taught through example, not lectures. He taught through devotion, not instruction. On the last night, he prayed as if it was his final prayer, slow, steady, heartfelt. Each sujud carried gratitude for the mercy already received and hope for the mercy yet to descend. His duas were filled with depth, full of longing, full of sincerity that wrapped around the night like a cloak of light, and his companions followed him. The masjid glowed with worshippers who refused to waste a single moment. You could feel it. The air was heavier, the hearts were softer, the atmosphere was electric with hope. This wasn't just routine. This was the final sprint. This was the night everything could change. The Prophet reminded his Ummah, not through speeches, but through his presence. Your end can erase your beginning. Your last moments can outweigh your weakest days. Your final effort can bring a lifetime of reward. He showed us that when Ramadan ends, the worship doesn't stop. The journey continues. The habits built in these nights are meant to breathe into the rest of the year. The sincerity felt in these moments is meant to follow you long. After the crescent moon appears, he ended the last 10 nights with strength, dignity, and unwavering devotion, because he knew the Lord he worshipped was most merciful, most near, most ready to forgive. And through him, we learn the greatest lesson of Ramadan. Anyone can start strong, but the believer ends stronger. These nights were his legacy, and now they are ours to carry forward.